He stood at the edge of the abyss, not in fear, but with a smile. The wind howled through the canyon behind him, yet he did not flinch. Below, the void stretched endlessly, no bottom, no shape, only an absence that seemed to pulse like a living thing. He had walked for days to reach this place, not out of desperation, but with purpose. And when he looked into it, something inside him shifted. Not terror, not madness, but clarity. You know this moment. You've felt it in your own life, though perhaps not so dramatically. A moment where everything you thought was real began to unravel. A conversation that made you question a lifelong belief. A night spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if your choices have meaning. A glance in the mirror that didn't reflect who you thought you were. These are the cracks through which the void peers in, and sometimes we stare back. What happens when we do? There is an old saying, "He who stares into the abyss must be careful, lest the abyss stare back." But what if that's not the whole truth? What if the abyss doesn't just stare back? It speaks. What if, in its silence, it reveals something more honest than anything the world has ever told us? And what if, instead of recoiling in horror, we find ourselves smiling? Consider this paradox. The deeper you look into meaninglessness, the more meaning begins to emerge, not as an answer, but as a question, not as a destination, but as a direction. The man at the edge of the void smiled because he saw something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He saw that the illusion of control, the scaffolding of certainty upon which we build our lives, is fragile. And in that fragility, he found freedom. But why does this terrify us? We live in a world obsessed with answers. Certainty is currency. We chase success, stability, love, and purpose, as if they are things to be grasped, held, owned. Yet the more we grasp, the more they slip through our fingers. We build identities like houses on sand, only to watch them erode beneath our feet. We surround ourselves with noise, social media, entertainment, distractions, to drown out the one voice we fear most, our own. And still, the void waits. It is not evil. It is not punishment. It is simply the space between all things, the silence after the last word, the pause before the next breath. To stare into it is to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of existence, that nothing is promised, that nothing lasts forever, and that the meaning we cling to is not given, but chosen. So why do we run from it? Because in that confrontation lies responsibility. If meaning isn't handed to us, then we must create it. If the universe is indifferent, then we must decide what matters. That burden is too much for many to bear. So we retreat into comfort, into routine, into beliefs that promise certainty. We trade depth for distraction, truth for convenience. But what if that smile was not madness, but wisdom? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that nothing you believed was absolute, that your fears, your ambitions, your definitions of success and failure, all of it was built on assumptions you never questioned. Imagine peeling away each layer, each mask, until there was nothing left but the raw, trembling core of your existence. What would remain? Would it be emptiness, or would it be possibility? The man who stared into the void did not find despair. He found the dissolution of all illusions, and in their place, something terrifyingly beautiful. The realization that he was free. Not free in the way society defines freedom, free from obligation, free from expectation, but free in the deepest sense, free to choose, free to create, free to become. And now so are you. But can you face it? Can you stand at the edge, look into the infinite unknown, and smile? Because the void is not waiting to consume you. It is waiting for you to meet it, eye to eye, mind to mind, heart to heart. And when you do, you will understand why he smiled. There is a moment, just before the mind breaks or transforms, when everything becomes still. Not the false stillness of silence, but the real kind. The kind that exists in the space between heartbeats, between thoughts, between the stories we tell ourselves to keep from falling apart. It is the stillness of raw awareness, unfiltered by belief, stripped of all justification. And in that moment, you realize something that no one ever truly prepares you for. You are not who you think you are, not your name, not your job, not your past failures or future dreams. Not the roles you play, the masks you wear, the love you've lost or the victories you've claimed. All of it. Gone in an instant if the universe so chooses. And yet you still exist. You still watch. You still wonder. So who then is watching? This is the hidden problem, not the void itself. But what stares back when you dare to look? Because the void does not answer. It only reflects. It shows you nothing and everything at once. And what you see depends entirely on how deeply you are willing to look. The great thinkers have danced around this truth for centuries. Nietzsche warned us, he who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. But he also said, if you gaze long enough into the abyss gazes back into you. He knew that staring into meaninglessness was not just dangerous, it was transformative. Not because the abyss changes you, but because it reveals what was always there, buried beneath layers of illusion. Freud called it the unconscious, a vast, unknowable force beneath our rational minds, shaping our desires, fears, and compulsions without our knowledge. Jung went further, suggesting that within this darkness lay the shadow, the repressed parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. To confront the shadow, he argued, was to face the full spectrum of one's being. Only then could true individuation occur. But what if the shadow is not merely personal? What if it is collective? What if entire civilizations have built their identities upon repression, denial, and distraction, constructing towering monuments of meaning to hide the gaping chasm beneath? Consider the modern world. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information, yet paradoxically, we feel more disconnected than ever. We surround ourselves with curated realities, algorithm-driven echoes of our own beliefs, reinforcing the illusion that we understand the world and ourselves. But beneath the surface, anxiety festers, depression rises. A creeping sense of emptiness haunts even the most successful among us. Why? Because we have mistaken certainty for truth, comfort for wisdom, and distraction for fulfillment. We have built lives atop foundations we never questioned. And now those foundations tremble under the weight of unspoken doubt. And still, we do not look down. Instead, we reach for more money, more validation, more distractions, more promises wrapped in the language of self-help and spiritual salvation. We chase purpose as if it were a destination rather than a direction. We seek gurus, mentors, influencers, hoping someone else will hand us the meaning we crave. But meaning is not given. Meaning is chosen, and that choice terrifies us, because to choose meaning is to accept responsibility. It means admitting that no one is coming to save us, that no system, no ideology, no savior will provide the answers we crave. It means facing the unbearable lightness of being unanchored, free, yes, but also utterly alone in the act of creation, which is why most people run. They retreat into certainty, into dogma, into blind faith in institutions, ideologies, and relationships that promise stability. They cling to identities like life rafts in a stormy sea, refusing to acknowledge that the sea is endless, that the raft will eventually rot, and that survival is not about holding on, but learning to swim. Yet swimming requires strength, awareness, courage. Courage to ask the question that lies at the heart of all human suffering. What if nothing matters? Not in the nihilistic sense, not in the defeatist way that leads to despair, but in the liberating realization that meaning is not discovered, but created. This is the hidden problem. We are terrified of the freedom that comes with realizing that everything we thought defined us is in the end arbitrary. That our fears, our desires, our ambitions, all of it can be deconstructed, examined, rewritten. And once you see that, you can never go back. You can no longer pretend that success is the goal, that happiness is the prize, that love is the answer, because none of these things are absolute. None of them last. None of them define the core of who you are. So what does? That is the question few dare to ask, and even fewer dare to answer. Because the answer is not found in books, in traditions, in doctrines or philosophies. The answer is found in the silence after the last word, in the breath between thoughts, in the space where the void waits, not to consume you, but to reveal you. To stare into the void is to strip away every lie you have ever told yourself, every mask you have worn, every story you have believed, and what remains, not emptiness, not destruction, but possibility, a terrifying infinite possibility. And that is why the man smiled, because he understood the secret that most spend their lives avoiding. The void does not take meaning from you. It gives you the chance to create it, for the first time, on your own terms. You have stared into the abyss, not metaphorically, not in fleeting moments of existential doubt, but truly. You have seen the scaffolding of your beliefs tremble, felt the weight of your illusions collapse beneath your feet. Yet you remain. But now comes the harder truth. Staring is not enough. Because the void does not simply exist out there, it exists within. It is the space between every thought, every breath, every heartbeat, and it has been shaping your life all along, quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. This is the unseen consequence. We speak often of fear, pain, loss, as if these are the great forces that shape us. But they are only symptoms. The true force is deeper. It is the silent architecture beneath our choices, the invisible hand that guides our desires, the hidden current pulling us toward patterns we do not understand but cannot escape. It begins with the mind's relentless need for meaning. From the moment you were born, your brain began constructing a narrative, a story to explain who you are, why you matter, what your place is in this vast and indifferent universe. That story was built from fragments, parental expectations, cultural conditioning, social reinforcement, and the endless stream of information flooding your senses every waking second. And so you became someone, a student, a worker, a son, a daughter, a lover, a failure, a success. These labels were not chosen, they were absorbed, internalized, repeated, until they became inseparable from your sense of self. But here is the paradox. The more certain you become of who you are, the less free you are to be anything else. Because identity is not just a reflection of reality. It is a prison built from repetition. Every time you reinforce a belief about yourself, every time you accept a label as truth, you narrow the field of possibility. You begin to act not from choice, but from habit, not from desire, but from expectation. And this is where the unseen consequences begin. Consider the cognitive biases that govern your daily life, the shortcuts your mind takes to make sense of the world. Confirmation bias leads you to see only what aligns with your existing beliefs. The Dunning-Kruger effect convinces you that you understand more than you actually do. The sunk cost fallacy traps you in failing endeavors, because you cannot bear to admit you were wrong. These are not flaws. They are survival mechanisms, evolutionary tools designed to keep you safe by reducing uncertainty. But in a world of infinite information, infinite pressure, infinite distraction, these same mechanisms become chains. They prevent you from seeing clearly. They prevent you from changing. They prevent you from being. And so you live your life half awake, navigating a reality shaped not by truth, but by assumption. Now consider the neurological level. Your brain is wired to seek reward and avoid pain. Dopamine floods your system when you receive validation, whether through likes on social media, praise at work, or the approval of those around you. Over time, you begin to crave these external affirmations, not because they bring lasting fulfillment, but because they temporarily silence the voice inside that whispers, "Is this all there is?" You chase success not because you want it, but because you fear what happens if you stop. You pursue love not because you need it, but because loneliness feels like falling into that same abyss again. You follow trends, adopt ideologies, mimic behaviors, all in an effort to feel solid, real, known. But none of it lasts, because nothing can satisfy the hunger that comes from living a life not fully chosen. This is the trap. You are not trapped by external forces alone. You are complicit in your own entrapment. Every time you choose comfort over curiosity, conformity over truth, distraction over depth, you reinforce the illusion that you are in control. But you are not. You are reacting. Reacting to expectations, to fears, to messages embedded so deeply in your psyche that you no longer recognize them as foreign. And so the cycle continues. You build a life based on borrowed meaning, then spend years trying to convince yourself that it is yours. You look for answers in places that only offer echoes. You seek freedom in ways that only deepen your enslavement. And all the while, the void remains, waiting. Not to consume you, not to destroy you, but to remind you of what you have forgotten. That you are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are not the roles you play or the masks you wear. You are something far more terrifying and far more powerful. You are awareness itself. And once you glimpse that truth, nothing will ever feel the same. Because now you know. The abyss does not take meaning from you. It strips away everything that is not you, so that what remains can finally be seen, not as a victim, not as a failure, not as a role to be played, but as something raw, something untamed, something free. And that is the most dangerous realization of all, because once you see it, you can never go back. Once you feel it, you can never settle again. Once you touch that infinite space within you, where fear and longing and meaning dissolve into pure potential, you are faced with a choice no one can make for you. Will you turn away? Or will you step forward into the unknown, into the silence, into yourself? And when you do, you will understand why he smiled, because he knew what most spend their lives avoiding, that the void is not the end, it is the beginning. There is a moment just before the fall, when you realize you are not afraid, not of failure, not of loss, not even of death. Because in that instant, you understand something so deeply counterintuitive, so utterly subversive to everything you have ever been taught, that it changes you forever. You do not need to be saved. No one is coming with the answer. No revelation will strike like lightning and absolve you of responsibility. No perfect job. No ideal relationship. No ideology or institution will hand you meaning on a silver platter. The world does not owe you fulfillment. It never did. And yet, you are still here, still breathing, still thinking, still choosing. That is the rebellion. To stop waiting for permission, to stop chasing certainty, to stop living as if meaning is something to be found rather than created. This is not about optimism or pessimism. It is not about seeing the glass half full or half empty. It is about shattering the glass entirely and realizing you were never thirsty in the first place. Let's be clear, this is not easy. Breaking free from the unseen forces that shape your life requires more than insight. It demands action, not grand dramatic gestures, but quiet, relentless defiance. a refusal to accept the narratives handed to you, a willingness to question everything, including yourself. So where do you begin? With awareness, not the passive kind, the kind that comes in fleeting moments of clarity, but the active, unrelenting kind that stares down every illusion, every habit, every belief, until nothing remains but raw, unfiltered truth. Ask yourself, what if I am not who I think I am? What if my fears are not warnings, but echoes of a past I no longer live? What if my desires are not mine at all, but imprints left by a world that profits from my longing? These questions are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to dismantle the false self that has been built over years of conditioning. And once that self begins to crumble, something else begins to emerge. Something older, something truer, something that does not seek validation, because it needs none. This is the beginning of real freedom. Not the kind sold in self-help books or motivational speeches, but the terrifying, exhilarating kind that comes when you stop looking outside yourself for answers and start creating them from within. History is filled with those who did just that. Consider Socrates, who wandered Athens asking questions no one wanted to answer, refusing to accept any belief without scrutiny. He was executed for it, not because he had dangerous ideas, but because he threatened the illusion that people already knew the truth. Or Diogenes, who lived in a barrel, rejected wealth, status, and comfort, and dared to laugh at kings. He understood that true power lies not in possessing things, but in needing nothing. Or Nietzsche himself, who stared into nihilism and did not flinch, who saw that God was dead, not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. Because if there are no higher truths, then we must create our own. Or Rumi, the Persian mystic who wrote of dissolving the self into pure presence, who saw that the ego is not the enemy, but the battleground where freedom is won. These were not passive thinkers. They were warriors of consciousness, rebels against the tyranny of unquestioned reality. And now, so are you. Because to awaken is to rebel. To choose meaning is to defy entropy. To stand at the edge of the void and smile is to say, I see you. I know what you are, and I'm not afraid. But this is only the beginning. Awareness alone is not enough. You must act. You must rewrite your narrative, not with words, but with choices. You must stop seeking external validation and start listening to the voice beneath the noise. You must abandon the need to be right, to be safe, to be understood, and instead embrace the uncertainty of becoming. This is not about rejecting the world. It is about reclaiming your agency within it. You can still work. You can still love. You can still build. But now you do it not out of fear, not out of obligation, not out of desperation, but out of choice. And that changes everything. Because now you are not living someone else's story. You are writing your own. And in that act, terrible and beautiful, you find the deepest form of freedom. Not freedom from suffering, not freedom from pain, but freedom to create meaning in spite of it. In the face of it, through it. This is the rebellion, and it is yours. Now, always, forever. You stand at the threshold, not of a new life, not of some grand transformation, but of something far more radical. The realization that nothing ever needed to change, not your past, not your failures, not your doubts or fears or regrets. None of it had to be erased, rewritten, or overcome, because you were never broken in the first place. This is the ultimate truth, that the void, the great abyss that we have feared for centuries, is not empty at all. It is full of everything you have spent your life running from, your rawness, your uncertainty, your infinite potential. And beneath it all, the one thing you have never been able to escape, no matter how hard you tried: presence, consciousness, being. This is who you are, not the roles you play, not the stories you tell yourself, not the masks you wear to survive in a world obsessed with certainty. You are the awareness behind every thought, the silence between every breath, the space in which everything arises and falls away. And once you see this, truly see it, nothing will ever feel the same. Because now you understand, you do not need to find meaning. You do not need to chase purpose. You do not need to become someone else. You already are. Not as an achievement, not as a destination, but as a fact, as the ground beneath your feet, the air in your lungs, the pulse in your veins. This is the final revelation, that the void was never against you. It was never trying to consume you. It was always offering you the most sacred gift of all, the chance to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop seeking, and to simply be. Not defined by success or failure, not bound by past or future, not trapped by belief or doubt, just pure, unfiltered existence. And in that existence, there is a freedom so vast, so complete, that it defies language. Because when you stop needing the world to give you meaning, when you stop waiting for permission to be real, when you finally stop resisting the present moment, you awaken, not to some mystical enlightenment, not to divine knowledge, but to the simple, undeniable truth. You were never lost. You were only looking in the wrong places. And now, at last, you see. You see that the man who stared into the void and smiled was not mad. He was awake. He saw what you now see. That the universe does not demand perfection. It demands presence. That life does not require certainty. It requires courage. That meaning is not given. It is chosen. And that choice, that terrifying, exhilarating act of creation, is yours alone. No one can make it for you. No system, no ideology, no savior, only you. Standing here, now, breathing, thinking, choosing. And in that choosing, you are free. Not someday. Not after you fix yourself. Not when the world finally makes sense. Now. Always. Forever. So go back into your life. Go back to the noise, the chaos, the endless distractions. But do not forget what you have seen. Do not return to sleepwalking. Because now you know. You are not just a character in someone else's story. You are the author, the creator, the witness, and the void. It is not your enemy. It is your mirror, your teacher, your home. So look again, look deeper, and if you dare, smile.